Hello, hello. Hey, look, people are joining. Hi, Aaron. And I see Florian and Pam and Phoebe and Helena and Alexa and Tammy and Dana. Hey, everybody. Yeah, so Erin's saying thanks for being interviewed for her book. She just put out a book of interviews with game designers, and I was starting to be a little concerned that it was going to be published before Stonemaier announced the game that I talk about in it, but the timing actually worked out perfectly, so I was glad to see that. I haven't gotten my hardback copy yet. I thought I would go for a little holiday spirit and sit in front of the wood stove tonight. It's cold here in DC. So who wants to kick it off with a question? If y'all don't ask questions, I'll start bragging about my game that's coming out. So, and there's actually a Facebook page for Wingspan. This is, well, upside down. This is the game that I have coming out. There it is in front of the camera. Pre-orders will start January 2nd with Stonemaier Games on their website. It's been a long time coming. I started working on it about 5 years ago, pitched it to Stonemaier at Gen Con in 2016, and Jamie Stegmaier and I spent about a year going back and forth in the development, and now it is finally sitting in a warehouse ready to go out to people's houses. Pretty exciting process. So Pam asks, when was I first able to talk about Wingspan? Jamie announced it the Wednesday, like a week and a half ago, basically, almost 2 years, 2 weeks ago. And before that, I had been playtesting a lot here in the DC area, so clearly there were folks who knew about it, but he had sort of asked to keep it on the down low. He wanted to make a big announcement, so it's just been a little while now, and it's been killing me to be holding my tongue. And Tammy asked how long I've been designing games, and that was really the first one that I started working on. So about 5 years ago. And Pam asked, what event did I pitch it at? I had actually, that year, I had applied to publisher speed dating and did not get in, but Stonemaier doesn't do publisher speed dating anyway. But Jamie that year, and I don't know if he still does this, he actually created a series of Gen Con events that you could sign up for. So just like one-on-one meetings with him in little half-hour slots. And I just booked one of those. And at that same Gen Con, I had 2 other meetings with other publishers. Dana's asking, did I pitch to other folks? And I kind of heard the process with all three of them was I pitched to them at Gen Con. None of them made a specific decision then, but they all said, you know, we're going to take the set of stuff that we heard about at Gen Con and talk about it afterwards, and we'll email you back. So I followed up with them the next week, and 2 people said no, and Jamie said, what do you remember about the feedback we gave you? What would you do to address that? We kind of emailed back and forth a little bit, and eventually he said, okay, go do those things and send it back to me. I sent it back to him around Thanksgiving, and then he signed it then. But it was really all that one batch of folks at Gen Con, which was really the first time that I felt like it was ready to pitch. Helene is asking, have I played games since I was young, or did I get into it as an adult? My family definitely played like card games, a lot of Scrabble, a lot of Hearts. You know, those kind of sort of mainstream games. I started playing what people call more hobby board games, probably around 2005, I would say. But before that, I was in college. I played a lot of like spades, and even at one point, everyone in the house I was living in learned bridge and sort of became obsessed with bridge for a little while. So increasingly difficult mainstream games, and then hobby games in the early mid 2000s. Florian asks, have I been working on other games while working to get Wingspan published? So yeah, after Wingspan got signed, I had a few ideas for other stuff and sort of work, but it was a pretty labor-intensive process. So I know a lot of designers like sort of bouncing back and forth between designs. I find that very difficult. I like to focus on one, but I did have a few that I sort of got to the point of making a first stage prototype and then sort of shelved them, wrote lots of notes about where I wanted to go next. So earlier this year, as Wingspan was kind of in a holding pattern and finally done, I picked one of those up and developed it and submitted it to the call for submissions that AEG just did for women designers. But that was something that I had first made a prototype of like 2 years ago and just been sitting on. Anna Maria asks, how long do you typically playtest a game? I'm not sure I've done enough to be typical yet, but Wingspan was years. And I think that's probably common that people's first, like a lot of people say they don't even ever finish their first game because it's just the learning process. I just wouldn't let it go. But that one was a couple of years, starting out just like friends and family and myself playing it, and then maybe a year of real playtesting with strangers before it was ready to pitch. The butterfly game that I was just talking about that I picked up this year after having left it for a couple of years, only spent maybe 6 months playtesting it, and I feel like I've gotten much more efficient about playtesting. So we'll see on future designs what typical becomes for me. Ooh, Pam wants to know what changes I made to Wingspan after Jamie's feedback. It was a lot. And I always forget exactly what came in when in the process. It was a much smaller, simpler game when I pitched it, and I think he sort of saw where it could go to be in his catalog, which are, you know, heavier, bigger games. So I had a deck of like 54 cards. One thing was he wanted like an impressive number of cards. He wanted to have a much stronger engine building, and I would say that was the biggest thing that we worked on, to just amp that up and amp that up and amp that up until finally now it's like you are building an engine, and that there's a real arc over the game that turns. When you start out, you are literally just like drawing one card and that's your turn, and by the end of the game you're, you know, drawing 5 cards and tucking a couple and doing several different things all in one turn. So, that, you know, and other little things here and there, but the biggest thing was sort of intensifying it and ramping it up. When is Tussie Mussy coming out? Anna Marie asks. So that is a game, that's an 18-card game that I did for a contest during Gen Con, the Gen Can't contest this summer. And I co-won that along with a game called Seasons of Rice by Corey Damey. And I saw Jason Tagmeyer, the owner of Button Shy, at PAX Unplugged. He said he had been intending to do it earlier in 2019, but got waylaid by the success of Sprawlopolis, which is great for him and no problem. And I don't know a specific date, sometime in 2019, but probably not early 2019 anymore. Bye, Helena. Dana asks, did I do Wingspan theme or mechanics first? Definitely theme. It actually came out of a conversation that I had with a group of friends that I was playing games with, where we were, I think we had just played Carcassonne or something with castles, and then we were like, why is everything all medieval and Renaissance or science fiction and nothing that we actually care about? And my brain just kind of started working in terms of, like, my husband and I are big nature geeks, and this whole group of friends really are. And like, there's all these economic systems in nature, you know, there's resources that things need, and competition for things. And my brain just started turning. We were starting to get more heavily into birding at the time, and I just started going from there. So that kind of answers Florian's question too. Pam wants to see components. I can't. The picture that Jamie posted first on the Wingspan Facebook page, which got everyone all excited, where there are eggs in the game. So I'm not used to using my web camera. The color's not great, the lighting's not great in here right now, but these are different eggs that are different colors. The colors don't actually mean anything in the game, but when I was testing it, I was using poker chips, and I just had like different colors of blue and white poker chips in my bag, and someone was like, you should totally have multicolored eggs in the game, and it kind of stuck. But the design is actually super cool. I was very, very impressed by this, because I was worried when Jamie said he wanted to make the eggs stand up that they would like roll a lot and get knocked over easily, but something about the weighting of them, they sit very nicely. I can't show that, I don't have a good surface, but they stay up, and even if you knock them over, they kind of roll in a circle instead of rolling off the table. So well done on whoever the designer of that component was, but they're super fun. Everyone compares them to Cadbury eggs, which I've never actually had. I mean, I had like the big chocolate Cadbury eggs with the disgusting, yummy, gooey center in them, but I've never had Cadbury eggs that look like this. So next Easter, I'm gonna have to find them. There are 5 dice in the game that have different kinds of food that birds eat. So little bugs and fish and mice and berries and grain somewhere on here, grain. And then super fun, there's actually a dice tower that looks like a bird feeder. And Beth Sobel, I think I saw Beth got on here, did the art on the side of this, which is just like a lovely little mossy, woody bird house, bird feeder type thing, and you throw the dice in the back, not the dice tower, and that's the food available until people take it. What else? There's little food chits that match all those symbols, and then there's this tray of 170 bird cards, which still kind of blows my mind. And each one has a unique illustration of an actual bird, and the habitat that it goes in, and the food that you eat. And most of the birds have something that they do during the game that adds to your engine. And then there are player mats that I'm not going to get at right now because I'm going to see if people have more questions. Phoebe wants to know, what advice would I give to new designers just starting their process? I think the biggest thing that I just still need to even tell myself over and over is don't try to keep your design in your head and work it all out by yourself. Like, make a prototype as early as possible, even if it's just like literally Sharpie on scratch paper, something that you can move around and play against yourself, and see, because there are so many things that you'll see about how something feels or works, that you'll see when you're actually trying to play it, that you can't work out, that I can't work out in my head, that most people can't work out in their head. And then once you've gone through that process of playing against yourself and, you know, crappy thing that no one ever needs to see, as soon as you can stand to put it in front of people, make a version that looks a little bit better, you know, that's legible and not handwritten, and get it in front of other people, because they will see things that you don't see in your own design, or you'll see them struggling with something that was intuitive to you. And it, like, game design just is the process of playing the game over and over, and then going back and making changes and trying it again. You can't do it in your head, and you can't do it on a spreadsheet as much time as I have spent with spreadsheets for this game. Oh, people are just saying nice things about the components. Here, I'll get the thank you, everyone. None of the beautiful stuff is my fault. It's all Beth and the two women who did the art for the bird cards, Natalia and Anna, who have never done game art before. Jamie just found them because they do bird art. So that was fun to work with them. So these are the player mats. Let's see if I can do this in a way that you can see it. There's 4 different actions that you can take in the game. You can play a bird, you can game food, you can lay eggs, you can draw cards. And as you get more birds out, you do more and more of each different action. So that's the general concept there. The background of this was done by Beth Sobel, and it's beautiful. And I love how, so like game food is associated with forest birds, and there's a forest on the background of player mat there, and some grassland and wetland. I love it. Dana asked, do I find it more challenging to be a female board game designer in a male-dominated hobby? I've never actually had situations where I felt like I was being treated differently, but I feel it felt very awkward and challenging to me to walk into a lot of spaces that were all male spaces to do playtesting. So Unpub, I forget if it was this past year or the year before, I sort of I skimmed the names, and it felt like it was maybe 10% female names, which is, you know, names aren't always a guarantee that you're getting it right, but definitely less than 50-50. And coming out of Unpub a few years ago, someone created a playtesting group here in the DC area, which has been just phenomenally helpful. And there are a few women in it, but it is not uncommon for me to show up and be the only woman at any given event. But I just kind of had to get over it and push through. And once I got to know all the people, it didn't feel awkward to me anymore to walk in. So now it's like, fine, I'm the only woman, whatever, these guys are all my friends. It's fine, but I'm also very conscious that me being there probably makes it easier for the next women to come and join. And I think I posted in Board Game Broads, or maybe it was another place, a few weeks ago, I just went to my first meeting of that group where we had a period of a couple hours where only women were testing games. We had 3 female designers that were all running concurrently, and I had never seen that before. And it's still novel enough that that's exciting to me, and I would love to get to the point where it's not. But in the meantime, yay, that was awesome. So. Anna Marie says, was I excited to find out it's almost completely an all-women production? Yeah, I was, and I love seeing that on the box, and I'm not sure when it completely dawned on me because Jamie just kept hiring the people individually and telling me about it. But yeah, I was thrilled to hear Beth Sobel was going to be doing stuff because I was familiar with her work already, so that was as much just being excited about Beth as about the fact that she's a woman. But then Anna and Natalia came on to do the birds, and the graphic designer was a woman, and at that point I was like, wow, this really is, it's a thing. So that was really fun. Yeah. And I do think it'll mean a lot to a lot of people to see all those names on the box. Jamie says the benefit is there's no lineups for the washrooms. Yeah, the first time I went to Gen Con, I was blown away by that. There's literally, like, I've never been to a convention that big that had room in the women's room. It's amazing. Yes. It was also kind of nice. I don't know how many of you guys entered the AEG call for submissions, but I was like, you know, this is a smaller pool than your average publisher's submission line, so that'll be nice for whoever makes it through that process. Anna Marie is promising to come to more Break My Game events next year. That's the name of our playtesting group. It's been so valuable. If you guys are in an area that has enough population density to try and get something going, and you're designing games, having a monthly just standing date at a this particular one is usually, well, we alternate kind of between a local game cafe and a game store. It's so valuable, not just for the playtesting, but for me also having that deadline of like, oh crap, next Saturday is the Break My Game thing. I need to push through and get some of this stuff worked out for then. But then just having people to regularly play with makes all the difference. How involved was I in the design and manufacturing process of Wingspan? Did Jamie consult me or get my opinion for graphic design and illustrations? He kind of ran them by me on some, but a lot of times it was kind of when they were pretty close to done, just making sure I was okay with them. I was involved with one of the 2 bird artists. We were going back and forth a lot of it. She got permission from several photographers to use their work as references for the bird art. And she actually sort of consulted with me on some of them of like, did I think this was a good one to use for this card, kind of same kind of thing. Jamie and I talked some about the cover, and I had kind of pointed out how perfectly that the flycatcher would fit on a square box cover. So little things like that. He consulted with me on the colors of the eggs. But a lot of it, I didn't have to do the actual work of figuring it out, if that makes sense. Like, he was doing all the groundwork of sort of giving the direction to folks and figuring a lot of it out. So I kind of got to weigh in an easy way and not have to do all the art direction. Phoebe says, what do I like doing when I'm not designing board games? So I actually am a birder and a hiker. I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I'm really involved in our local mushroom club also. My husband teaches classes on foraging for wild foods. So sort of that set of stuff. What else? I do kind of a lot of artsy craftsy stuff, which bleeds over into prototyping. Yeah, and you say when I'm not designing board games or playing games. It's surprising actually how much designing games cuts into the time to play board games. Especially when you're getting your friends to play test for you, because then you can only do one or the other with them, which is another reason that outside playtesting groups can be super helpful. Florian says, what made you want to join Board Game Broads? I don't remember how I heard about it. It might have been through Anna Maria. But like I was talking about with the playtesting groups being mostly guys, I just really appreciate meeting other women in the industry, women who play games, who are designing games. Yeah, it's good to have a little camaraderie. So it may have been on one of those days that I was just like, wow, am I really the only one? So, yeah. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little hoarse. I got a cold after PAX Unplugged. I was teasing Anna Maria that I would blame her if I got one. I guess I should do that. Pam Wallace says, get your friends to play test a game and then play an actual game. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who are parents, and we often only get one game in, and it's like an either-or proposition, especially because my games tend to run like about an hour or longer sometimes. So, yeah. That's actually been one of my theories about why there aren't more female game designers. I think women get saddled with more of the childcare and more tired at the end of the day. And almost all game designers are just doing this in their free time at the end of the day. So more equal distribution of labor will be more women game designers. Pam wants to know, how was PAX Unplugged? I was actually working at a booth for a good chunk of the weekend, which was actually really fun for me. Like, I tend to feel a little lost sometimes at big cons, and I liked knowing exactly where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing. And I was demoing a really fun game. So Matthew O'Malley, who's designed a bunch of games, including a couple of other Stonemaier games, he has these dice called knot dice that have Celtic knots on the sides of them, which are super fun and simple to teach. So it was a really fun experience working at a booth for those, which is, I had never worked a booth before. So that was fun, something new. Anna Maria wants to know, what's my favorite type of game? That is a good question. I tend more Euro, and I like a little meat on the bones, like an hour or more, but not too long, somewhere in that sweet spot. So Euro in the sense of, I don't like a lot of randomness that decides whether you were successful or not. Like Arkham Horror is not my bag. But I'm fine with randomness if then I like have things to decide about what I do with the random things, if that makes sense. Yeah, I like engine builders a lot. I know a lot more about sort of how they work than I did a couple of years ago. Tammy wants to know what color I usually pick. My thing is, I often will pick the color that I am wearing, if that is possible, because I have a tendency to forget what color I am. And I wear a lot of blue and purple and pink, so usually something in that spectrum. Even if I'm not wearing it, then because I often pick it because I'm wearing it, those are the colors that I kind of gravitate, and they're just my favorite colors. So blue and purple a lot. It's not as often that you get pink as a player color. And my husband has started picking pink as a player color just to be, I don't know, bend gender norms or something. Florian says, do I notice my own game designs tend toward a certain type of game? I've noticed that my game designs, except Tussie Mussy, which is a simple little silly, fun but very simple game, someone called it fluff, but fluff done well, which I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that review. I thought, yes. But other than that, like my core set of stuff that I'm working on, my tendency is to make them heavier than I actually want them to be. Like the way that my first draft of a design comes out seemed like it would be super simple in my head and never is. And then my design process often is dumbing it down or simplifying it, making it more elegant. So I don't know if I have a certain type. Like, so the game I just submitted to AEG, which is about it's about migrating monarch butterflies. So as of right now, all of the games that I have in process or getting published have some sort of nature-y relation. So, you know, I have always been theme first on everything that I've started so far, and those themes come from the things that I like, and that is nature-y stuff. So I have a game about birds, and then this game about butterflies that I just mostly finished, and another one I've been working on that there was a Russian project where they tried to breed foxes into domesticated dogs, sort of testing theories about how domestication works. I have one in very preliminary stages about mushrooms. And that's actually another piece of advice for new game designers is design a game about something that you really love, because you're going to have to play it a million bazillion times. So it better be something that you're willing to do that with. So Pam wants to know what I'm working on now. Right now, I am wrapping up actually an expansion for Wingspan. So Jamie has been pretty public about the fact that we've been talking about doing an expansion for each continent. So the birds in base Wingspan are all North American birds, because I figured I would start with what I know, and I live in DC. And have traveled more in North America than anywhere else. So I really know North American birds pretty well. So I started there. And also just conceptually, it was easier for me to think about, like, okay, these birds are kind of in the same place at once. We'll have to come up with some theory about why you're mixing Europe into the mix. So yeah, I've been working on a whole new set of cards for an expansion for Wingspan. I just kind of wrapped up for now until I hear back from AEG the butterfly game. The fox game I had kind of set aside, and I may pick that up for Unpub, or I may start something new. I'm not sure. Let's see. Unpub is in March. If you guys don't know, it's a great con that is purely playtesting. It's outside of Baltimore. Tables are all taken for this year. They sell out almost the minute they go on sale, which is kind of amazing to me. There are so many people designing games. But you can go just as a playtester if you're on the East Coast. It's a great opportunity to meet a lot of designers, even if you don't have a table. And if you are designing or interested in designing, you should definitely have it on your radar as something for when the tables for 2020 go on sale, to be right there and ready to grab one if you want to get one. Tammy wants to know, do I have a day job or is game design full-time? So I am a freelance consultant, which is sometimes full-time and often not, which I feel really fortunate about. I don't know how I would have finished Wingspan if I had been working as hard as I used to. I do health policy, and I actually put in several years working for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and then working on Capitol Hill, which is why I live here outside of D.C. And then I got kind of burnt out working on the Hill, way more than 40 hours a week, and with politics getting uglier and uglier. So I went into the consulting world for a while. I was working at a firm, and And a few years ago, I was able to go freelance, which has been great and freed up a lot of time for game design and for other stuff. My husband's a landscape designer, so we often travel in January since he has nothing going on, and I'm able to kind of arrange my projects so I have nothing going on. That's been fun too. Florian wants to know any themes or kinds of games that new designers should avoid. That's a good question. I mean, if there's something where you've seen 3 or 4 games come out in 1 year, all with the same theme, by the time you finish your game 3 years from now, think about how many more games with that theme will be at. But I don't know, there were a bunch of successful zombie games. Like, it doesn't necessarily stop anything if your game is really good. So mostly I would just say design something you love, because there's no guarantee it'll ever get published, but if you like it, you'll still have made something you like. Anna Marie is excited for Wingspan expansions. If I could work with anyone, who would it be? That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have a good enough sense of how other people work, but I have seen several design duos in action, especially, so I playtest a lot actually with Matthew O'Malley. He lives about a mile from me. I mentioned him earlier. He did most recently Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig for Stonemaier, which is fantastic. It's kind of a smash up of Castles of Mad King Ludwig and Between Two Cities. Definitely worth checking out. But anyway, he has a design team with Ben Rossett. They do almost everything they do together, and it is interesting to see how they work together, and they're able to get a lot done by sort of bouncing things back and forth depending on who's sort of burnt out on what, and they're definitely working on more than one design at once, and I just feel like my brain can't. So I would not rule out working with someone else, but off the top of my head I can't think of who that ideal person would be. Sarah Ship wants to know, are there plans to market Wingspan to nature organizations? I'm on the fence about whether that's a good idea because Wingspan is a little heavy. It's like just north of a gateway game. And there are probably lots of folks who patronize nature organization gift shops that could handle it, but probably some people that would be really frustrated by it. I don't know. I'm kind of leaving that up to Jamie, the whole marketing side. But it's definitely something that some folks have been recommending in the Wingspan Facebook group that he set up, because it does seem like a no-brainer. And there are definitely some ornithologists in that group who are kind of freaking out excited, which is so fun to see. Those are my peeps. Anna Marie is seconding Unpub. Yeah, I can't recommend Unpub enough as an attendee or as a designer. If you're able to get to Baltimore easily, it's a great event. Pam says, have you been surprised how excited people are about the bird theme? Kind of, yeah. I wasn't sure. The very first time that I took it to Break My Game, our local DC playtesting group, one of the guys there was like, this is a good game, it's pretty smooth, but man, the theme, you're gonna have to change that for any publisher to want it. And so even at the publisher level, I was concerned, but convinced that I would be able to find the right person who liked birds or who kind of saw where I was going with it. Birding is actually, I've seen statistics that it's one of the most popular hobbies worldwide, and I was fairly confident that there was a decent amount of overlap between birding and gaming, and then that there would be some more people that are more into birding than gaming that would be interested to make up for any gamers who never go outside and are totally not interested in birds as a theme. But I think even from the comments on the Wingspan page, I think even some of those people are like, oh, maybe that is an interesting thing. So we'll see. I would be super happy if that happened too, that we get some people into birds that wouldn't have been otherwise. Um, but yeah, I don't think I was expecting the level of freak out that we have seen from some people who are just like super excited, like I have made the game for them because the two things that they love in the world are board games and birds. And that's just been like, oh my God, the best thing ever to see that as a designer. So that's great. Pam wants to know, did the publishers who turned it down give reasons why? I mean, one of them was they were both just sort of generic, like this isn't what we're looking for right now. They didn't say it was a theme. I think it was more the gameplay, or just, how it fit in their lineup compared to other things that they got pitched that same year. I haven't gone back and done the math of like, okay, what are they publishing now? That was probably what they got pitched that year. Maybe I should do that. I'd be curious now that I think of it. Florian asked, do I have a certain age level I go for designing? And is there a certain age range designers like to see? That's a good question. I talked a little bit earlier about how I tend to design like complicated and tone it down. And so I think like I tend to want to bring it down to like that 10 and up kind of range, which I think is what got put on Wingspan. I think partly it depends on I think it's just good to define relatively early in your design process what age range you are going for, and then really think about how what you're working on fits in the age range that you think is your target for the game. Like, it's not so much that I want all of my games to be for a certain age range, but I want to be clear with myself and with my playtesters about what age range I'm hoping this will fit with, so that we can decide whether it feels like it'll work for that age range. Does that make sense? I do think a lot more and more people are playing games with their kids, and it is nice to have those available, but there will also always be demand for games that are just complicated as heck. So I think you can do both. I think it's just, and there's a certain marriage of theme there too, right? Like a game about migrating monarch butterflies. I don't know, maybe someone would say this about birds too, but with the butterflies, I definitely tried to have it be simpler, and because a lot of kids are learning about the monarch migration in elementary school where I am, and so I wanted it to be sort of a little more accessible to younger ages, because I think it would be interesting to them. I've been talking for 40 minutes straight. You guys are full of questions. This is awesome. This is super fun. I'm not seeing anything else. Are you out of stuff? Dana says, can you give any tips for pitching a game to publishers? One tip I heard last year at Unpub is don't try to pitch at Gen Con anymore, because it is so big, and so many designers are going to Gen Con and asking for meetings. Number one, it's harder to even get a meeting. And number two, the publishers are so exhausted because it's so big and they're having so many meetings and demoing to so many people on the floor and whatnot, that it's just not the best environment to pitch. And I thought that was really interesting, having used it as a successful strategy myself. So folks were saying sort of aim at the next level down, the Origins, the PAX Unplugged, those sorts of cons where there are still lots of publishers, but they are less frazzled and exhausted. But in terms of your actual pitch, I think, get the key information out very quickly in terms of who your intended audience is what kind of game is it? Is it competitive or cooperative? Is it an engine builder? Like what, something to like kind of let them hook their minds on, but then also some kind of hook about what makes it different, which might just be the theme, or it might be something special about the mechanics of it. But I think most publishers are looking for sort of what makes your game unique, and how are they going to pitch it to people who are buying it from them. I don't know. I'm trying to think what else. I just participated as a judge for a first time in a design contest, and I had a little list that I put together of things after having watched a whole bunch of 2-minute videos. It was a lot of people spent more time than I wanted to hear on the theme out of 2 minutes, which is probably like how longer than you would spend even talking to a publisher without them jumping in with questions. But 30 seconds felt too long on theme. Like I really wanted to hear how the game actually worked and what it actually was, not like some story about the world that it is set in. So I hope that's helpful. There's a really good blog by Senfun Lim and Jay Cormier called the Bamboozle Brothers, where they have a whole series of posts called, I think it's called From Inspiration to Publication. And they have really great write-ups about every stage of the process that I found really helpful as I was going through it. So I would point you toward that as one resource. Florian wants to know, is it better to pitch in person or via email or some other indirect method? I think in person is probably better if you get someone who's not totally exhausted. But I do think, especially now that it's so easy to do videos, I wonder if more publishers aren't going to start seriously considering pitches. I think the norm is to go to a con and to pitch there, but I think like this AEG whole process, right? That was all video based and sell sheet based. So I don't know, we'll see. I'd be interested to hear from publishers about that more. But I do think you get something in person because part of what publishers are looking for also is, I've heard several say this, like they want to know that the person that's pitching the game to them is someone that they can work with, that, you know, when they have feedback and are in the development process, that someone will take the feedback well, that and all the work that goes into from the moment that it's signed to the time that it comes out, and even all of the stuff that has to happen as it's coming out now, right? Like I'm doing tons of things like this and participating in the Facebook group and whatnot. Like they want to know that the designer is a good person to work with as much as they want to like the game. I mean, obviously the game's more important, but a bad interpersonal experience with the designer could probably tank a good game. So I think the in-person pitch helps them get more comfortable with you as a designer more than they can pick up on paper. Florian wants to know also, is applying to contests and having a game published that way been different from pitching to a publisher and having it picked up? Yeah. I mean, so the downside of pitching in person is that like my nerves were totally crazy going into Gen Con. I didn't have quite that same process. Maybe it's also experience too, submitting to the contest. You can kind of do it at your own pace and you're not quite so on the spot. What else is different? Yeah, and you don't have that sense of having met the people. So like I went several months and then I finally met the button shy guy at PAX Unplugged. But other than that, we had just kind of emailed back and forth. So it was great to put a personal experience on top of that email correspondence. So that's, yeah. So as a designer, it's also nice to have actually met your publisher in person. Oh, Pam linked to the Inspiration to Publication blog. Great. Pam wants to know, how involved will I be in the media promotion of Wingspan? Will I go to cons to promote the game next year? I actually haven't talked much with Jamie about that. He doesn't rely a lot on cons for promotion, I don't think, because he personally doesn't enjoy cons. Which is, we actually kind of bonded over that in my pitch, which maybe that helped. I don't know. So he hasn't directly asked me to do a lot of stuff. He asked if I was willing to have him give my email address out, and he asked if I'd be, if I would participate in the Wingspan Facebook group, which I was happy to do. So, but in terms of actually traveling to promote it, I don't know. I may go just because it'll be fun to see it out in the wild. I haven't figured out my schedule for next year yet. My husband's been lobbying for me to go to fewer cons because I get sick every time I go. And he's not a huge fan of them. He didn't come with me to PAX Unplugged. Not sure if I'm not getting the comments or if you guys are done for the night. It's getting late here. Florian wants to know, how much traveling do I do for cons? I haven't done that much. So as I mentioned, I mean, I'm of two minds about cons. They're very exciting and fun, but I also get very overwhelmed by all the people. So it's not like a way that I choose to spend all of my vacation time. When I have time off, I am more likely to go camping than I am to go to a con. But that said, I think as I know more and more people in the industry, it's also feeling less overwhelming, and I know that it's a great way to meet people. Although I didn't actually get a chance to meet some of the people that I had been hoping to at PAX Unplugged, even though I've been chatting with them online. It's just when there's a lot of people, you have to really try hard to connect sometimes with folks. So I don't know what the right answer is or where I'll end up on that. Do I think I would pitch at Gen Con again in the future? You know what, the PAX Unplugged is much closer to me because I'm in DC and it's up in Philly. And there are an awful lot of publishers there this year. I think I would probably figure out one of the tricks is to figure out who you think the right publishers are for your game. And really sort of target your efforts. And so part of it's like figuring out, if I have some publishers in mind, where do I know that they will be, and is there one con where they would all be? And then if so, I would probably try and do that. But I'm kind of curious to check out Origins. I've heard people say that that is a more chill environment, but still very large. So I'm not sure how that works. Oh, Phoebe asked about my favorite bird, and I didn't see it. Anna Maria is pointing that out to me. I think that's the second time that you said Phoebe asked me something that I didn't see. Anyway, sorry, Phoebe. My favorite bird is probably the roseate spoonbill, which is it's only really in like the very southern United States. I grew up in Florida, in Gainesville, Florida, which is like the northern edge of its range. It is this crazy large, like the size of a great blue heron, if you know that bird, pink bird with this bill that literally has like a spoon shape on the end of it, which it uses to catch like little shrimpy invertebrate things in the water. They're crazy, just wrong looking birds, and I love them. Partly because they remind me of home, and partly just because they're amazing. So that's probably my favorite. Do I find myself learning more and more about game design even after a few years? Definitely. Definitely. I think I'm getting better at it and faster at it and more able to diagnose what I could do to make the game better than like what's the next step. Sort of watching a playtest or playing through something, and being able to say, okay, that's, this thing seemed really fiddly, and the way to fix that is to simplify it in this way or whatever. So yeah, I've been talking a lot about the monthly group that I am in, but I also, with Matthew O'Malley, who I've mentioned several times, partly because I play test with him once a week, and that, man, if you can set up something like that, that is huge, to really make a lot of progress quickly. And I think that has been part of learning, is really being disciplined about making changes every week, getting it back on the table every week, having other people bringing in ideas about how to make things better, pointing out related games that I should be looking at, things like that. So, do I have a goal I want to accomplish in 2019? Asks Pam. I'd love to get another game signed. I'd love to find a home for that Monarch game. I really like it. I think other people will like it. What else? And I'd like to get another one like solidly underway. Whether that's the Fox game I was talking about or one other one. Yeah, that's enough. One game, getting that sort of up and going. It boggles my mind when other people talk about how many things they have going at once, but I'm like, slow and steady wins the race, right? I am waiting to hear back from AEG about the butterfly game, which I think will happen early 2019. I think that was their schedule, at least for the first round. And then that'll give me time to know whether I should be thinking about pitching it somewhere over the summer. That's at all the cons there. Or I'd even sit on it till the fall, maybe for PAX Unplugged. I don't know. Although I just saw that PAX Unplugged got announced. It's like in next December, which seems dicey getting closer to Christmas travel. But I don't know. It's early December. I don't know. We'll see how that works out for people. It's rough being close to Thanksgiving. Like, it was close enough to Thanksgiving that it was a little awkward as well. Florian says March 2019 for the AEG. That's their final decision, I think. I know I'm going to be out of town a bunch in January, and I remember thinking, oh, I need to like leave my prototype with someone in case I need to have it mailed out. So. I can hear my husband coughing upstairs too. we're a wreck this week. I'm over it. So don't feel bad, Anna Maria. And Pam says, yeah, it's 9:58. Time to wrap up. Thank you guys so much. This is so fun. I can't believe we had an hour worth of stuff to talk about, but it's been great. All right, I'm gonna click out. Thanks.